So let's go through the steps. Let's go through the cycle steps and what's happening in a valve from step to step, and we can relate it to a troubleshooting. Things to look for. So this is a softener valve. This is a 2510 softener valve. When it gets set up, when it gets initiated into a regeneration, it's going to, again, step up and do its first step. In order for that to happen, you have to have power to the valve. One of the first things you can look at without even looking or touching anything is to make sure that the time of day is currently what the time of day is indicated on the valve. If you don't have the correct time of day, it's a good indication that you probably don't have power on the valve, or the timer motor isn't working correctly because it's not getting electricity. All of these motors should be warm, again, if it's got 24-hour gear, so you can take a touch. Another thing is you can look through the window to make sure that it's running the way it's supposed to be. Let's go ahead and step this one through cycle steps. So, we have tabs pulled out, whatever particular frequency we need it to be. I have it set up for every other day. When one of those tabs comes around, pushes our valve into a regeneration, comes out of home, and initiates a backwash or regeneration step. Step switch rides up on the switches. We're now in our backwash position on the valve. That backwash position is always going to be piston all the way in. Backwash water is coming through the center of the piston, going down through the center pole in the tank, flowing water in reverse. That water now comes up through the tank and out through the drain port. This drain port is the center port on the 2510 valve, as with all of our others. You want to make sure when you're in backwash that you're getting good strong flow to the drain. And it should be max flow at whatever the drain is sized at. If it isn't hard flow, whatever the drain is sized at, there's a couple of things that need to be checked right away. One of them is there's a drain line flow control. You want to make sure that that's open and flowing clearly the way it's supposed to be. You want to make sure you've got appropriate water pressure to push water to the drain the way it needs to be. Another thing that you want to do is check with the drain in order that you're getting good flow. You want to make sure that the drain is flowing freely from the point of the valve all the way to wherever the effluent's being expelled. So you want to check to make sure that your pipe is running open and clear, that it's not rising too far, that there's nothing that might be living inside the pipe or anything like that. You want to make sure that it's flowing freely to the drain. So putting it in backwash and then checking then for clear flow is always a good thing because it's going to affect everything after it. That step is cleaning the bed. It's mixing it up, it's moving it around, cleaning off all the particulate and cleaning the bed. The next thing I want to step to is in our softener is brine and rinse. So the valve advances. It now advances enough forward. It moves the piston far enough forward to push water up through the screen side. That water goes over, goes through the injector. That injector venturi creates a jet of water that goes from the throat, or the nozzle down to the throat, creates a vacuum. That vacuum gets pulled on our brine line. That brine line vacuum now pulls brine water into the injector system and mixes it with that rinse water and puts it down into the tank. So all of those things have to be working correctly in order for us to brine. We have to have water in our brine tank. We have to have water to make brine. That brine has to come through a brine valve that's open, through our port, into our injector that's creating a vacuum, and then gets pushed down through the bed. If those things all don't happen, we won't brine our softener and we won't make soft water. Just because those things don't happen doesn't mean the valve doesn't think they happen. So the valve could go from step to step to step and think it's doing everything it's supposed to be doing, and if we don't have all of those things working, it won't create a softener. We're just going to have a 30 micron filter full of softening resin. So some of the things to make sure that you have when this goes to the step. Good vacuum can be checked. The most easy way of checking for a good vacuum is taking the brine line off from whatever brine valve it's connected to, and putting your thumb or your finger over the end to make sure you've got good vacuum. That's the first thing you want to check. A couple things could happen here. You might have a valve that's It goes to draw, sounds like it's drawing, but it's not creating a good vacuum. A couple of the main reasons for that happening is a screen that's plugged up. That screen that's inside the valve is actually there to clean out any particulate that might get plugged up into the injector nozzle. When that gets plugged up, it slows the water flow down enough that it doesn't create a good jet of water through our injector, doesn't create good vacuum, and you get kind of a slurpy kind of sound, but it's not creating any vacuum. That would be an injector likely that you need to clean up one part of the injector assembly. Next thing that could happen is you take the brine line off and it's shooting water out shooting it out instead of sucking it in. My experience has always been that if you put it to draw and you immediately get water shooting out, it's seals and spacers. That's usually the issue. It would take quite a bit of damage or fouling or something really wrong with your injector for it to immediately start filling instead of drawing. These brine valves need to be riding on this cam in order to open. So again, you want to make sure that it's open, that you're getting some flow one way or the other. Because if you aren't, if there's nothing happening here, and you can tell that there's no motion, you want to make sure that your brine valve is getting pressed open. This brine valve does not have any influence on how well the injector works. If you're having draw issues, like you put it in draw and then you're not getting draw, that brine valve has no influence on that. It's simply a poppet valve or a two-position valve, open or closed.